Hey guys, real quick before we start this is my first video in February, and February is Black History Month, so I linked a history.com article down in the description, and I also linked a bunch of my favorite creators of color down there if you'd like to go check them out. And if you have any other creators of color you enjoy, you can comment them down below. So happy Black History Month, and if you would like to check out those resources linked in the description, that'd be great. Alright, on to the video.
Hey guys, I'm literally filming this from my iPad as a precursor to this video you're about to watch. So here's the deal. As we know, I have a huge vendetta against Shadow and Bone. We know. So I filmed this video that I've probably been talking about on this channel for a very long while of just like a long-winded, hateful rant against Shadow and Bone. There's no other way to put it. If you love Shadow and Bone, this is no offense to you. This is just the fact that I don't like it. And so that's just the first disclaimer. And the second disclaimer is this video is a bit odd. It freezes like 8 minutes in and it's just me going while like the audio talks under it for the whole rest of this video. So that's something, but I kind of still wanted to upload it because you can just probably listen to it as a podcast. And I'm pretty sure my next video or content coming out will be about the Shadow and Bone show after you see this video. So I wanted to put this up just as like my actual thoughts on the books. If anyone has any idea of how to fix a video that's frozen like this, let me know down below because I could always re-upload it. But yeah, that's what you're getting. I'm going to be moving around for like 8 minutes and then I'm going to freeze and you're going to still hear talking, but I'm going to be for the whole time. Got it? Okay, on to the video. Hello, my name's Emma, and I just spent the better part of 2 months reading Shadow and Bone. And spoiler alert, it was not worth it. This video will have spoilers, as I don't really see a way to avoid that at all. But I just really wanted to rant for a second. I was gonna script this video, and it probably would have sounded better if it was, but I literally just finished reading Ruin and Rising, and I have so many issues with Shadow and Bone. I'm just a casual reader, disclaimer, a lot of people like this book, so don't attack me, it's just my opinion, but it was actually almost unbearable for me to read. So, what is Shadow and Bone? It's your classic YA about a girl, ordinary girl, Bella Swan type, brown hair, sickly looking, I know, really attractive, but basically the same YA girl ever, but her name's Alina, and of course she figures out she has magical abilities. At first, I was kind of invested because I had just read a book similar to this that I really liked, which had a similar start, but right off the bat they start throwing terms at you like Grisha and all this stuff, and it's kind of, you can tell based on some of the last names that it's kind of based off of Russia a little bit, but other than that, I had no idea what was going on. And I read all of them just so I could read Six of Crows, and I'm going to read that soon. Everyone says that's the redeeming quality of the series, but yeah. There's just so many things wrong with it. In the first part, this is why this should have been scripted. It literally should have been, but it is too late for me to care about that. Also, the hairless cat in the background, my best friend put it there, so ignore that. But anyway, the first part, the thing I have a complaint with, is the main character. She literally feels like a slice of paper. So do all of the characters. Like, they had to throw in this love interest, Mal, who's like her best friend, and he's super talented as well, but he's not magical, don't worry, until you find out later that he is, kind of. And basically, all the characters are just very one-dimensional. Alina, who we're unfortunately stuck with for literally the whole book, she has this downer attitude on life that isn't even fully explored. It's just that everything she runs commentary on is always negative, and what's worse, coupled with that, is how negative the book gets in some parts, so it makes it absolutely exhausting to read. But the largest problem I really have with this is the contradictions and how it contradicts itself. The book, it sets up so many rules. Like, they tell you that they put a framework in place of how this society is supposed to work, which every story should, so it's cool. But
For example, the main conflict in the first book, finding these antlers and Alina hopefully not getting forced into being controlled by the evil being, the Darkling, who's like 4,000 years old, and she still is attracted to. They explain it by saying their magic is attracted to each other, but I don't even care. That's so weird. It's so terrible. And so basically they set up this whole first book. It's like Alina is going to go get this stag, which is going to make her power like 10 times more powerful. But she has to get there before the Darkling, because if he gets it and puts it on her, he'll be like controlling her or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. But then they get there and essentially lead the Darkling to the stag, and he gets it and he puts it on her and he controls her. And I'll be honest, when I was reading it, I was like, this is terrible. How is she going to get out of this? Because they had taught you as a rule of like magic, this is why she had to get there first, that this couldn't happen. Because if this happened, she couldn't be saved. But how can you write a book when your main character is literally being manipulated by someone else? That's what I wondered. And instead of actually like finding a clever way out of it, or just not doing that in the first place, they said that because she showed the stag compassion and didn't kill it, which they later say that she needs to do to get the power of the amplifier, they say because she didn't kill it, she can't be controlled, and she just breaks free of it after a couple days. And it makes no sense. And because it also makes no sense because they say she can control it because she broke free of the stag. But later, they say she has to kill it to do it, and she didn't kill the stag. I think I'm remembering this correctly. If I'm remembering this wrong, feel free to yell at me. But really, it's bad. And then the first book is just set up, and it's boring. It's really boring. I didn't think I would be able to read it, and my friend who I borrowed it from kept asking me, when am I going to get this book back? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't even know if I'll ever finish it at this rate. Oh, it was terrible. But then the second book is just filler. Although I did like the second book more than the other one, literally, they started off like they're hiding. It's just, the next two books are just this like giant game of hide and seek from the Darkling, which is a terrible premise to begin with. You don't want to write a book just about running from someone. At least I don't want to read that, but I was already in it at this point and I had to finish because I had to read Six of Crows after, which I'm going to, and I'm really hoping it redeems this universe for me. So Alina is still being super negative. Her and Mal have gotten back together because she's like, I never stopped loving you. I was just taken away from you. I thought about you all the time. I totally didn't have a literal like affair with the 4,000-year-old being that's now trying to chase us and kill us. It's almost as bad as the sibling incest in Mortal Instruments. It's so... I probably sound funny talking about this, but it's really... So then, Alina, they're hiding, literally, and then within the first 10 pages, they're found. I forget exactly what happens, but all I know is they get rescued by this pirate dude, who is easily the best character in the series, who we later come to figure out that he's Nikolai, woo, who's like the younger prince, and then just decided to go sail the world and leave everything to awfulness. And so basically, they go on this like ship, and they're like, we have to get the whole like setup is building to getting the amplifiers so then they can eventually defeat the Darkling. And they think they know what they are. They have the antlers, which by the way, she has to wear around like a necklace. That would be horrible, and you can't take it off. The logistics of this are not. And so basically they're on this ship, and Mal, her bestie, childhood best friend, also love interest, even though they have literally no chemistry, and he had more chemistry with this other Grisha girl. They try to talk to him. And so they're stuck together on this ship, being all like, or escaping, whatever. These pirates are helping them escape from the Darkling. That's all I remember. And then they're like looking for the sea, I think it's like a sea wasp. Whatever it is, it's ancient, magical, and at first, like every other thing, they're like, this doesn't exist. It's a story. But guess what? It exists. So Mal, who's got these superpower tracking abilities, yet still has no magic,
I assumed that because he was so freakishly good at tracking and that everyone wanted him, that this would just be like a given, like later we would figure out. And later we do, but it just drives me crazy how throughout the whole thing, they're like, oh, the sun summoner and her little human friend. And it's like, they've set him up to have these crazy tracking abilities from the beginning. These people are obviously smarter to know than that he's worthless. But anyway, they're tracking this this thing that they need to get. I think it's like a little bracelet is what it becomes for her. And Mal's basically like, I can't do it. We're in the middle of the sea. How am I going to be able to do this? And she literally is just like, believe. And he's like, didn't think about that one. And then they find the thing. I literally wish I was kidding. Yeah, and then there's like this whole fight with the Darkling, but on ships, which is not the same fight. Ugh, it literally is. It starts, ends, someone gets hurt, usually Mal, because Alina barely gets hurt, and if she does, she gets better. And then at the end of it, he's like, I'll come get you someday. It's like really bad. And so then they sail off with this Nikolai dude, and they're like, I forget what they're even trying to do at this point. I think they need to go talk to the priest, who's like this weird, we set him up in the beginning as this like, smells like dead people, weird rotting dude, but he's kept around for some reason. No one knows why he's here. And then he forms a cult around the main character, Alina, and they're like, we need his help. I don't even know if this video is gonna make any sense, but really. And so then, I even forget what happens. So basically they're going back for some reason, and this Nikolai dude is like, he's like, I'm Prince, gonna go help you guys, then we can take over, get the Darkling out of power, and I can reclaim the throne as the rightful heir, even though I have a brother and an older one who should probably rule, but they're like, oh, he's dumb, we don't want him. So Nikolai wants to be king. Surprise, surprise. And so they're all like, okay, this is how bad it is. I literally just read this book and I forget what they're doing in it. But basically somehow they get to the capital or whatever, and there's this huge showdown with the Darkling. Some people die, and it's a little bit dramatic for the first time, and I thought that part of it was interesting. Like, it was the first time I was actually like all these people are dying. Alina actually seems affected. She doesn't seem like she doesn't have a personality. And then that death was repeated like 20 times throughout that book and the next one, and it was no longer touching or new. But yeah. So yeah, there's like this failed attempt to hold the capital and keep the king, whatever, keep him there. I don't even know what everyone wants at this point. And then they escape and somehow get into like, see, this is like, I probably sound so stupid, but literally this is how confusing these books were to me and how dull they were to read. It was really such a pain. I have to read a book club book next because I help run it at this one, and I really am praying it will be better than this cursed series because it's driving me crazy, and I'm so glad to be done with it. But basically, they somehow get to this, remember the demented priest who smells like dead people or something? They're like, we need his help, or he helps them, or something. He gets them out of a sticky situation, which is yet another face-off between Alina and the Darkling, which, surprise, goes nowhere. But this time, Alina can now summon little shadows, which can't even actually help her because it's literally like nothing, but it does help them to pull off a trick that I loved. This was like this, I was interested in this part of it. They have to like escape from this underground thing because Alina doesn't have any powers because there's no light. She's like the sun summoner or whatever, but they're underground, so there's no light. So she's basically like being told she's ill by all these people just to trap her there because they're like, you're our saint, you're too important to us. And she's like, guys, this dude is about to destroy the world with the fold. I didn't even mention the fold. This must just be sounding crazier and crazier. So basically, the fold is this like
what even is the Fold? The Fold is like this huge like Grand Canyon type of just blackness and fog where these monsters live because there's no light. But Alina has light. So the Darkling in the first book was like, let's destroy the Fold. But then we figure out that he was the one who made the Fold and just wants to expand it. So basically, yeah, that's a thing that's going on that we're reckoning with. I forget how I got from being underground to the Fold, but anyway. So yeah, Alina's like trapped down there with all her friends in this like underground city, which sounds pretty cool, but they're literally like treating her as an insane person there. So she got to get out. And so she does with this like trick in the kitchens or whatever. It was actually pretty clever. Like I said, I liked that part of the book. And then they're like, we need to go get the last amplifier. And this whole time they've been setting these like rules. Like the amplifier is this phoenix. It's this like, we need to go get, or Firebird, I guess is what it is. It's literally was on the cover of Ruin Rising. It's over there. I don't want to go get it. But they're basically like, this, we need to get this, and then we will be good enough to defeat the Darkling. Even though the Darkling's mom, who like taught Alina how to do all this stuff, is like, don't. Like, don't. I've seen this type of power before. You know what you're messing with. You don't even know what you're messing with. Don't. And they're like, nah, but your son is an issue. And she's like, I know. And so they get out, they escape, and their old friend Nikolai has like this little hideout for them. And they're like, we're going to go there. And somehow they get like the Darkling's mom, like I mentioned, to this place. This is sounding terrible. I don't even remember how this goes. I'm just angrily ranting about Shadow and Bone. But so basically then they all get to this like little hideout that Nikolai has, and they're like planning. They're gonna go on this expedition. Some people are gonna go get the Firebird. Some people are gonna go do something else. I forget. And then one of their friends betrays them, and the Darkling shows up, and Alina literally cuts a mountain in half right before this, yet somehow still can't do anything about anyone. And so then the Darkling's mom has to do something to stop him, and she does like this little thing, and she dies, which is terrible because she was one of the best characters as well. And now the main characters get latched with this little boy that was also her caretaker. And she was blind because in the second book, the Darkling blinded her for telling Alina to run and telling Alina that he was about to try to control her. So he already took her eyes, and now she dies because of him. And this whole book, it paints it out to be this like moral struggle of the Darkling, like, no one belongs. I've lived for like 4,000 years, which sure, it's gotta be lonely, but he's like being all angsty about it. And he's like, I need someone, and you, Alina, you are that someone because your power rivals mine, whatever. We're pulled to each other. It's like that whole thing where they were like, our magic attracts each other. And so he's like, apparently like, I don't even know, but he's just like, they paint him to be misunderstood basically throughout a lot of this. They're like, and then like she figures out his real name from his mom, and he like reacts like differently or whatever. Like it's a break in his awful murdering people facade. But then like he keeps doing terrible things even though they're trying to like paint him as like maybe he still has a chance of redemption. And then he kills his mom. And for me, that's when in the story, when the mom dies, that I'm just beyond the point of hope for this Darkling dude. Because at first I was like, maybe she has a chance. He was kind of into her, like maybe a little bit, even if he was just into her power. Maybe she can like change him, which we all know how that mentality goes. Doesn't work. But then it's just ridiculous. So basically, I just need you to know of this existing trope where they're like, the Darkling can be redeemed a little bit. So where were we? We were at Nikolai's place where, yeah, he kills his mom and a couple of them run away. Only a couple of them. Now we're down to like 8 people max. Some of these people I still don't even know. Like there's this guy named Harshaw who has like this cat, and the cat is just there like the whole time, and couldn't tell you. But yeah, so they get away, surprise, surprise, and they're gonna go hunt the Firebird. And this is the last book, so it's kind of like, okay, you gotta get there. And so after like this long, totally unnecessary journey, which was just like filler, whatever. But also you do have to kind of put it in there, so I guess I get it. They like get to this place and there's this giant bird that literally tries to kill them. And Alina sees it and she's like, that's not the amplifier. And she uses her power and it's like more powerful. I don't know, something changes where she like does something, either like scaring it off or like a demonstration. But her power is like bigger, as if the bird was the amplifier. But she's like, nope, the bird isn't the amplifier. I know it's not. So then they've been reading these journals from like this old dude, Mirzavost, who ends up being Baghra's like granddad or dad. I think it was her dad. And he was like either the creator or like someone who was trying to join these 3 amplifiers, and then like his daughter ended up getting killed in the process or something. I don't remember. But they're reading these journals and then they're like hypothesizing about like what this amplifier could be throughout like the whole book. And it comes to this place, which is where they go to get the Firebird. But then they're like, apparently Alina was from there, and so was Mal when they were kids. And then somehow they come to the, I was actually kind of shocked by this. I did not expect this, but that doesn't mean it was good for me. It didn't make me more interested. I was just like, wow, you're really gonna go that far off course. So basically, the Firebird is not an amplifier. Mal is the amplifier. You know, her best friend, who she's like in love with. And now, because they've contradicted that first thing about the stag, they have this rule in place where you have to kill the thing to use the amplifier. So basically, then they set up this thing throughout the last half, even like third of the book, where they're like, she's going to have to kill Mal. Mal is going to have to die for her to win this fight with Darkling. Okay, just kill Mal and get this book over with. So then they get to like this final battle and their plan is to bend light, which, cool. So they're gonna bend this light, do a sneak attack, and get the Darkling. Because, and they technically have the 3rd amplifier because Mal's there. And their grand plan is that if this somehow goes wrong, which I don't know why it would, this guy's a 4,000-year-old being who has had thousands of years to prepare for this. Basically, it's gonna go wrong. But their like last resort, or what Alina thinks is her last resort, Mal the whole time is like, I'm ready to die. You can kill me. And she's like, no, we're in love, even though we have no chemistry. So then their last resort plan is to like just kill Mal so that she can have the power, even though she's been warned by the Darkling's mom that it's gonna like kill her or whatever. Can't come back from that. So then, this is gonna sound so unbelievable. So then they get to the final battle. Sneak attack kind of works for a little bit, but then surprise, the Darkling has more people, so they're gonna lose. And then, oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, Nikolai, their friend, this was actually tragic. This is something that made me go. Nikolai got turned by the Darkling. This is like in the same scene when he killed his mom, into like this evil monster bird thingy that has then been following them the whole journey to go to the Firebird. And it's still kind of Nikolai because he's not like reporting back, but it's still like bad. Like it's really bad. He's just like this demon thing who has like subconsciousness, but also tries to eat Alina once. So that's a thing. So basically they're in this battle. One of the people that's important to them nearly dies. I forget who it is. I don't even know anymore. And Nikolai, as this like demon bird thingy, takes the person off. And then the Darkling and Alina come face to face. Wow, this is like the 4th time this has happened. And nothing comes of it. She runs away. She's hurt though this time. Can't forget that. And they're down there and Mal is like, I can't be responsible for this. You need to kill me so that you can end all this. Because in the book, it's like there are screams all over. And Alina's like, no, I can't kill you. And he gives her like this knife and then they stab him. I wish I was kidding. And then the book is like, he's dead. Mal's dead. So I'm just like, okay, Mal's dead. He is not coming back. I'm sure you can all guess where this is going. So then Alina gets this huge power surge that isn't even really explained. And then when she's like done self-combusting, she's like, I don't have any power.
And we're all like, what? So she doesn't have her powers anymore because this huge unit, like when all the 3 amplifiers were united, it cost. No doubt, we've been warned about this. But then apparently, this is never explored really. All these normal people that are like miles away, or at least this is what I think happens. This is what I gathered from the book that I literally finished an hour ago. They get turned into sun summoners and get power. And so the Darkling's like, oh, ooh, I don't want to mess with this. And Alina's like, I may not have my power, but I can still stab people. And so she takes like this Grisha steel, which is like supposedly the only, basically it's just like deadly. It's like harder magical steel. And so she stabs him. And he's like dying there, and they bring back this whole Darkling redemption idea. They're like, he's like, don't forget my real name. It's Alexander. That way someone will remember me. And we're all like, okay, you literally caused all this destruction. Do you even deserve to be remembered? Like, what? And she gets emotional too. She's like, yes, don't worry, I will. And then he dies, and I assume the fold is destroyed. They address that later. They're like, the fold is receding. All these people are coming back. Whatever. And then Alina goes back to Mal, and she's like, to these twins that have been with her, they're part of her crew, and she's like, heal him. Heal him. And she says it like 20 times. And at this point, I'm like, okay, maybe she could be emotional, grieving, like, okay, just don't, for the Lord's sake, do another sloppy writing mistake and bring back in Mal just because we don't want her to be sad. Honestly, at this point in the book, I was like, okay, keep Mal dead so we can show that this battle had some real repercussions, especially on Alina. She's probably going to be scarred for the rest of her life, with or without Mal. But Mal is dead. You said he was dead. It literally said that he was dead. And suddenly, Mal is alive. What do you know? And then we like cut or transition to the next scene where he's like, they're all getting healed because of course Alina was hurt too. Wow, she doesn't have her powers anymore. And then they like pretend they both died. So none of them have to face responsibility. The Sun Summoner can now like, and then they talk about it, and they're like, she says in her little demented little head that's been narrating this whole thing, she's like, that must have been his like fake life. Like, she's like, he had 2 lives. One, the stolen life that this crazy old bat like Merzavost, who used to experiment, like he was the guy, remember, like the mom's father. He was like that dude that tried to do all the amplifiers, and then bad stuff ended up happening. So she's like, this is this life that was brought about by all this bad stuff, and this is his actual life. And he has 2, and we're all like, what? And then he loses all his tracking abilities too. So that was magical, like I thought from the beginning. And then she goes and meets with Nikolai, and he's like, we should get married. And she's like, no, which he should have given up already, but go off. And then they like all go to this town square thing, and she's in disguise because everyone thinks she's dead. And remember that whole cult I mentioned forming around her earlier? The cult of Santa Lina, because they think she's like a saint because she's a sun summoner. So the priest dude shows up, and one of her friends who has the power to like change how things look, like she used to beautify the queen, that's how they met, they were both in the court. She's changed this dead girl who was one of her friends into looking exactly like her, so that this literal corpse of one of her friends is transformed to look like her. And in the book, she has this moment where she's like, is this bad? And then she's like, no, it's what she would have wanted. And so then they have this whole ceremony where everyone's like crying because they're like, our saint is gone, and they burn this friend's body as her. And then they burn the Darkling with her, and she's like, she says his name. She says his name because he asked her to. He caused all these problems, and she still fulfilled his last request. And he gets to be buried burned with their saint. And so then
it cuts back to her and Mal taking this ring that Nikolai ended up giving her when he first proposed to her, and like right when he at the like end, right before this bonfire scene, when he was like, marry me, he said it for the last time, this is what I mean, like he should have given up, but he does give her the ring and he's like, sell it, buy something, start a new life, because he is the MVP, we love him. And so her and Mal, I assume, by the orphanage they grew up in, and they run it, and all these kids have a great life, and they're like narrating this last chapter from the teacher's perspective, where the teachers are like, these two are so weird, and then it's like they grieve all the time too though, and we're all like, okay. And then it's like, oh, they see their friends from time to time, but these owners are so weird, and then they settle down and have a good life, whatever. And Alina no longer has powers anymore, neither does Mal, and they just live this ordinary, peaceful life. And that is how it ends. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people yelling at me being like, you forgot so many details. And yes, I did. I read all of these books. It took me a month to read 3 of these books, and it was the longest month of reading of my life. I love to read, but this series really, really tried my patience. So after this literally 30-minute rant, I'm going to sum up my main points before I go and go away. 1, this book contradicts itself constantly. It puts rules in place that we assume to be true and then just skates around them with some, oh, it's magic. For example, Mal dying, the collar not actually working, all this stuff that they set up to be unavoidable is suddenly avoidable for the convenience of the story and the main character, who doesn't even have a personality of her own. And that was, of course, my second annoyance. And I feel like it's just not it. But I will be reading Six of Crows and hoping that it restores my hope in this literal universe, because right now I'm about to go read the Inheritance Games and never, ever look at Shadow and Bone again. Thank you for listening to my rant.